Our next speaker is Mr. Craig Chong, who's an executive coach. And today he will be coaching a room full of great executives. That's us. Right? Right. He's going to talk about our purpose and pro-tirement. My husband keeps asking me, am I ever going to retire? And I said, no, I don't think so. So I'm pro-tiring. So please welcome Craig.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm honored that you'll listen to a young man talk about some of these subjects that are probably way out of my league. But I have the wonderful opportunity to be mentored by some very amazing sages, and they've taught me a lot. So what I'm going to be drawing on is a lot of their stuff that I've learned over the years. Here's where I want to start. Just want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a father of 2 girls. They just made 7 and 9, and that's my beautiful wife Sandy. And we have a dog Hoku, and Hoku is 12 years old. So how many of you guys have been up here to the top of Makapu? It's really beautiful, but that was a couple months ago. Okay, so one of the things is, as she said, is I'm a coach and I'm a facilitator more than a speaker. So I'm going to be asking you guys to interact. I'm going to ask you to move around a little bit. But what I want you to do is now introduce you. You may not know everybody sitting around you, but tell them your name, something interesting about yourself that no one in the group knows about you, okay? So you might need to think a little bit deep. And we're looking for fun and interesting stuff, and I'm going to call on a couple of you if you guys have something interesting to share with the larger group, so it'll be a little bit fun, okay? So, for example, I do this all the time, and one of the responses I've had one time is, one person goes, you know what, I'm really into bidets. You know, how many of you guys are into bidets? So he's like telling us about bidets, the one to order, the model number on Amazon, and so forth, okay? So I was like, all right, I've met you, okay? So I'm actually teaching at the university, teaching in the MBA program, and I asked the same question, and the girl says, yeah, I know you. You're the guy that asked this question to my husband downtown in this corporate thing. And she's like, you know, my thing is, when I was in just after college, I was working for a .com, and what I would do is, I didn't want to wash laundry, so I would order underwear every week online, and that was my thing. And these 2 guys are married, and it's like, oh my gosh. So I want you to I'm going to give you literally no more than a minute apiece, so 4 minutes. Just pick 3 or 4 people right around you and answer that, okay? Doesn't matter who. All right, heads up, everybody. So let me go first. I'm going to share mine very quickly. So if you look down in this corner here, heads up. Heads up. I know these are really fun, but this is my little hobby. What I like to do is I like to do these planted tanks. So we actually, basically, it's like a soda can. We put CO2 into the water, and you put all these grow lights, the kind that you can grow marijuana with, and I have this on my front porch, and my wife, I have 4 of them now, and my wife's like, no more, you know, but this is where I have a glass of wine or drink some beer and just reflect. But that's my little fun hobby. And then Kathleen over there, who's taking pictures, we've been working together for the last few weeks on a project here with the school, and little did we know, but her husband is into this stuff too, so we're like, all right, we need to swap pictures and meet and do that. So what are some interesting things? Let me get like maybe half a dozen of you. Just raise your hand. I heard one, a really good one here.
I'm Beryl Pomeroy. I'm originally from Maui. And my interesting fact is that my dad was the lead chemist at Maui Land and Pineapple. And so Hanekala Dairy had asked Maui Land to come up with a recipe for passion orange guava drink. And my dad was the original guy who...
Yeah, that's amazing kind of stuff, right?
But because he worked for Maui Land, we don't get any royalties.
All right, somebody else. Real quick, hands up. Who wants to share something interesting? All right.
Hi, I'm Joyce Waterman. For years, I worked in corporate America, And one day I was introduced to clowning, and I became a professional clown for 10 years.
Wonderful. Somebody else.
When I graduated high school, I had an opera scholarship, and I never got to use it. I just went on and lived in Micronesia with my husband, who was a rocket scientist and worked for GE, taking care of secret documents. My name is Rosemary Giasoli, and my youngest son was born on that little island, and the doctor that delivered my sons, he and the assistants were singing to me as I delivered the child.
Wow.
Where do you work, John? Adela Kawakawa. This is an old Italian song. And then it comes to, what do you do, John? I push, I push, I push.
Oh, fantastic.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Clark, and I was born and raised in Cuba. And when I was 13 years old, I attended my first wedding, and it was the wedding of Fidel Castro.
Oh, wow. Two more. I know we got lots of gold in this room. Come on. Two more people. Raise your hand. Anybody? Come on. We got one over there. Shirley. Come on, Shirley. Share with us.
Well, this is an interesting thing that I heard from our partner, that they're putting together a family and oh, am I supposed to say something about myself? But anyway, they're going to Wyoming to watch the eclipse. 2 years ago, I was 77 then, and I walked the last 100 miles of the Camino de Santiago in Spain.
Wow, fantastic. All right. So one of the reasons why I do this exercise is that I'm always amazed, no matter how well the groups know each other, that they still don't know each other, right? And that's exactly what's happening here. So you guys have this wonderful community, and you chit-chat about aches and pains, or you can talk about, real estate or your grandchildren, but you actually never ask questions, and there's actually gold here in the room. Okay? And that's what you guys have. So one of the things that I, as a coach, use is this framework called the Johari window with a lot of my clients. And it comes from these brilliant guys in the 70s. It was part of the whole PSI, human capital kind of thing. But it was this whole thing of, there's this, their names are Joe and Harry, so they call it the Johari window. Okay? So you'll see in quadrant 1, and by the way, just so you know, I changed all the slides. So you have to forgive me. I'm a P on the Myers-Briggs rather than a J. And by the time, but here's the great part, is that I was actually, because of this opportunity, I started integrating some new material into what I do. So you're not getting the same old stuff. But one of the things is this area of quadrant 1, which is really there's the open free area, which is known by yourself and known by everybody else. So you can look at my bio and you can find all of these things. And then there's this quadrant 2 that's unknown by yourself, but it's known by other people. And this is what we call the blind spot, right? And we all know that you can't smell your own BO, right? And you can't smell your own bad breath, right? And we all have blind spots, and that's why we have blind spots. But if you actually invite people in and you actually build communities, it can actually help you see what you can't see. And oftentimes in life, we can't see everything. As smart and as wise as you are, you still need community. You still need people, and that's part of why we bring you here together. Third window is what we call a hidden area. So it's known by yourself, but unknown by others. That's exactly what we're practicing. Okay? So it's this whole thing of how do you actually put yourself out there? How do you self-disclose and expose? No, you can keep your coats on, but how do you expose so that people know? So when I ask some of you guys to share in small groups or to stand up something interesting about yourself, you go, wow, you scratch your head and you go, what else have people experienced that I've not asked them about? And that's one of your roles as sages in the community, is to really ask people, so what's going on with you? Or what's interesting? Asking each other, but also asking the next generation about that, because part of it is it's understanding what's important to people and asking those key questions. So it's experiencing this hidden area. We're going to go a little bit more into it as we go through this, what we call a cycle of renewal. Okay, and the last part is what we call this area that's unknown. So it's self-discovery. So it's both sides, and this is kind of where you need to move into the future. And where you guys are at in your season of life, a lot of the future is uncharted, right? Technology is massively changing, all the information that we have, all of these different things. Even people my age don't know what to do all of it. But as you move into the future, you're going to need to go, here's what I don't know, and here's what I do know. And then can you help me? So there are actually tools for you to think about using long term. Okay? So this is kind of where I go off the chart. Okay? I'm going to come back to what's in your books. And if you want the PowerPoints, I'll send it to Virginia, and we can have them printed out or something for you next week. Okay? But I want to introduce you to Frederick Hudson. Frederick I got influenced through the Hudson Institute of Coaching, which is in Santa Barbara. And Frederick was a prolific writer. He set up this whole institute for coaching. But he actually passed away about 2 years ago. And he was a brilliant, kind of one of the most brilliant men that I've ever met. I got to learn, not necessarily from him, but from his wife and from his books and his readings. But he actually, what I'm going to be drawing on today, psycho-renewal, as well as some of this other stuff, I attribute a lot of that to Frederick. So that's a framework that I want to start off with. So this is Frederick. Okay, so over the past 50 to 60 years, we've added around 30 healthy years to our adult lives, right? We've relinquished what we call old rules about what happens when, and as the pace of change gains momentum, the challenge of purposeful living filled with real passion requires more consciousness, contemplation than ever before. So what I'm throwing out here for you today is actually if you think about your life even more, where you're at, and you actually self-reflect along the way, and I give you some tools to think about it, you can actually have more purpose. And purpose is the very thing that keeps us alive. And your purpose, your calling, is what you're designed for. Otherwise, you're just a biological blob. But purpose actually pulls it all together and gives you meaning in life, gives you hope. Okay? So Virginia mentioned this concept called pro-tirement versus retirement. And Frederick coined this. And what he says is that retirement no longer means to disengage from work, but to begin again with living as a centerpiece. I call it pro-tirement, Frederick says, meaning to move ahead into those activities that will continue to a continuance of the best years of your life. Okay? So what we're finding in the demographic studies, baby boomers, which I think a whole bunch of you guys here are part of that generation, it's actually growing. And what we're realizing is because we're in a knowledge economy, so another great mentor of mine, Peter Drucker, in the 1950s says, hey, we're going to be a knowledge economy rather than people that are working on the farms. So guess what? You're not going to, at 60, when you retire, you're not going to be tired, but you still have these faculties. Now, what do you do with them? Okay, for the next 30 to 40 years. And actually, for most of us in the research out there, it's largely undefined what this next 30 to 40 years is about. And what people are doing is, it's kind of crazy out there, right? They're actually living this out, okay? So let me talk about some decade kinds of things, okay? So you guys all remember when you're in 20s and you're starting and it's just like all of this energy, but, it's not really focused, right? And then 30s is really the season of where people, hey, they reach success and they finally made it. They're buying their first home. They're getting married. There's all of these different things going on. Probably your kids or grandkids are in some of these areas. Or 40-something, kind of where I'm at, 40-something. Hey, I'm going to take charge. It's our turn to lead. Hey, give us the reins, and our generation is going through. And it's really the season of taking charge. 50-something really has to do with you've made it, you're established, you're leading, but then it really moves towards what we call, what is the quality of life that you have? It's not more is better, but, better is better, right? And then 60-something is really this thing that Frederick is talking about, which is really about pro-tirement. okay? And it's really looking at, you know what, people don't retire anymore. They have minds, they're not tired, they're not gonna, actually, our whole retirement system was based on this thing that people would probably expire in 20 to 25 years. And now they're living 30 to 40 years longer, and it's basically throwing off the entire system, right? You look at our state ERS, right? 70 to 90 something, elderhood, mentoring, and blessing. Those are really just this sage kind of years. And there's actually not a whole lot of research out there, but as we move along, as more and more people are in it, as you guys are part of this today, never in history before have we had so many centurions, people living to 90, able to manage their hormones and think about that. You know what I mean? We've never had that kind of technology, right? You know, and it's about mentoring. So how do you pour out into others? How do you be a blessing? How do you call out things? How do you bring out that gold? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the decades. So how many of you guys are in your 50s or 60s? You mind raising your hands? I'm going to go by decade, you know, these things. All right, just so I know who I'm talking to. Okay, so 50, 60, 50-somethings and 60-somethings are, so it's really about redesigning life, work, and leisure. So 50-somethings, 60-somethings are very similar. They both find the world to be challenging and fulfilling. Both are fairly healthy, well-funded, active, and increasingly concerned with social mentoring. 50-year-olds tend to measure life in terms of improvements beyond their 40s, and 60-year-olds tend to view their decade as a passage into the uncertainties of the remaining years. So people in this decade often feel as they're racing against time as they combine their current plans with the unknown realities ahead of them, okay? So there's some upsides to both of it, okay? So some of the upsides are, you know, lots of options. So now that I'm 60 and I can do all these things and I have a retirement account, I have faculties, I can jet travel anywhere in the world within 24 hours, you know, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? You know, it becomes a real big challenge. They often wish to mentor, guide, model, shape, transform, help, and serve is what they're looking for. This mentoring thing is really big. I do a lot of mentoring, and I had some great mentors to learn from. But a mentor is someone who is not only competent at doing something, but is competent at being human as well, a mensch, the Jewish term a mensch, right? So it's really a complete person. So at this stage of life, you have so much that you're just full, you're whole, and you can give back, which is beautiful. Okay, downside, retirement is a major transition for those who have built their lives around work. So if you're just hardcore into work and you don't have something interesting to do or things, hobbies and things that are fun, it's a tough transition. I help a lot of people with this area. Not typically feeling or act like they are, quote, old, but they're often treated as if they're old, you know? You know, they charge into a full agenda of leisure activities, travel schedules, and busy lifestyles, but oftentimes what they experience is a slowdown of their physical and some of their mental recall. So one of the things I want to do is I want to show you a couple mentors of mine that I've worked with. So up in the top corner is Catherine Payne. She retired from Farrington High School, probably one of the top principals in the state. And she's 65 now. DJ Mailer, I actually helped her. We use the same model that you have in the book. And I actually helped DJ in her last year of retirement, before she retired, to actually go, all right, I'm going to put in a stake in the sand. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this. And she had beautiful grandkids popping up on the mainland. Her two daughters are out there. They bought a 3,500 square foot house in Idaho, and she and her husband moved up there. So worked with DJ. And the last person is, can you guys guess who that is? You know who that is in yellow? He turns on the power and light. No, Alan Oshima. So Alan Oshima, I started working with when he retired, okay? And then Connie Lau got a hold of him, and then all of a sudden he's running the power company. And if you ask him today, he's more alive and having more fun than ever before. He never thought he'd have this third career. He was actually done. He's just volunteering. So he runs Hawaii 3 hours volunteering. And Alan just made 70 about 2 months ago, and he's loving it. He's loving what he's doing. Okay, so thinking outside of the box, you can have this pro-tirement or a third career, and it'll look different for everybody. Okay? The question is, do you have a 40-year plan? This area is so uncharted. Oops. So we make a big fuss about retiring in our 60s, but little sense of our development as human beings in our 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's the longest time period in people's lives. If you plan it out and stay engaged with the themes and functions of younger life, you will evolve and you will mature. Okay? Pro-tirement is throwing yourself ahead into a new blend of work and other activities. It's a positive plan for a new chapter in life, emphasizing possible options and personal renewal. So oftentimes it's a portfolio. You don't all need to take on new jobs. DJ does a little bit of consulting. She does a little bit of board work, and then she does grandma and mommy, in her latter years. Alan's just got a brand new grandson, so he's being grandpa, he's being community leader, he's being CEO. But that's another professional life. But there's all kinds of different options, and it's really the portfolio of what you really want to bring. But I want to challenge you guys to thinking about how do you actually think deeply and forward about these undefined years. It's sort of like, well, you're going to retire, but you got 30 years. Usually it used to be like 10, 15, 20. Now you got 30 to 40 years to think about. How are you going to sustain that? Take some thought. Okay? So here's an example of somebody that's influenced my life. I'm a Druckerite. How many of you guys know who Peter Drucker is? Father of modern day management. If not, he's written, you see these books? 39 books. Okay? When he was in his 60s, basically he made a foible. Basically he was the guru. Everybody would come to him and ask him about things. He would actually, he was Wall Street Journal all the time, Harvard Business Review. And what happened was he made a foible, and then basically Wall Street wrote him off as he's losing his mind. Okay? But guess what? He was focused. He had a lot of hobbies. He had a lot of great things to do. And he wrote from that point onward. And out of the 39 books, how many do you think he did in his professional career? It's actually only about 40%. The 60% was after he retired. Okay, so that's one way that people can actually, leave a legacy. So he put his work into that. Okay, so 70s. Okay, so 70s are about integrity, celebration, and contribution. So active 70-somethings have 3 missions. 1, to live their integrity. Okay, to celebrate their fullness, and 3, to contribute beyond their personal needs. So living your integrity has to do with your core values, what matters most to you and how you contribute to it. Mortality is a reality in your 70s, and they want to be good stewards of their talents, wealth, and possessions while they're still alive. Hearts of people that are in their 70s, not all elders, increase in compassion for others, is what we found. Okay? The upside is that personal integrity is, they're superly, massively preoccupied with this. How many of you guys are in your 70s here? Wow. Okay, a lot of you. Is this true? Is some of this stuff that we're saying true? Yeah? Okay. They live in a space and time of elderhood or sages, the wise ones whose experience and memories encompass more living than all who are younger. Okay? So what's been said is they carry several generations within their experience. Okay? So, it's just really an honor to be with you to actually ask you about your life and what's going on. But that's what you bring to the table. Okay? Downside is our society still sees people in their elder years as worthless and dying creatures. Have you guys heard about ageism? Ageism shapes the destinies of many elders, even in their 50s and 60s, far more than their inner plans do. It's discrimination, right? 70-somethings want to make their remaining days count for something, but struggle to be relevant by the mainstream. Okay? Elders are not so afraid of death as they are afraid of becoming dependent on others and life support systems. That's kind of one of the big fears. Okay? So that last thing, you see my mom and my 2 girls, she's 75. She had a huge impact on me. she was actually, this whole aging thing, she was, for like 20-something years, she was a division chief for the Executive Office of Aging, Office of the Governor. So I always heard about the silver tsunami, and now we're living it. She would talk about it. But my mom, one of the things is for her, it's some of that. You know, it's just like she doesn't want me to, she's really worried about me having to take care of her, you know. Ted Sakai, anybody know Ted Sakai? Ted Sakai and I used to do a lot of work together. And Ted, when he retired, he did some consulting with me in projects. And Ted would say, I only do the kind of work that I like to do. And I do what's important. And if you've read any of his op-eds recently, you're going to see the pureness of his heart come through. Because it's really all about integrity. I mean, Ted is just, it's about principles, it's about values. And that's what he's bleeding. And I think Ted is 72. And he's actually going through cancer right now. He's fighting it. So you can pray for him. But he's fighting through it. But what's important? So time with the kids. He was going to come speak with me this weekend. I invited him, but he's like, Mary Monarch. So every year he's at Mary Monarch. So I know he's just taking that all in. Okay? And then lastly, Dennis Taranishi. So both Ted and, I get a lot of wisdom, of course, from my mom. She tells me things that, get your elbows off the table, or, but there's more than just that, Ted, I hired Ted to come work with me, and I would ask Ted, so what should I do? And he'll give me direction and guidance. Just wise, sage guidance. Dennis Taranishi, he's retired from Hawaiian Host and another one of these big ag companies. And Dennis, in the last few years, he's been a sage to me as well. I'm on a board, I serve on a board with him. He's been a consultant with me, and I'll ask him, what should we do? Or am I going too fast? How should I approach this? And just, it's amazing. And when you talk about the generations inside of them, like Ted will tell me stories of, when he grew up and talking about the Hilo tsunami and what happened there. Dennis will tell me about what it was really actually like to live on the plantation and to talk about the plantation mentality. And these things are just, they're living, you guys all have these things in you. I know a lot of you do. But those are the stories that are valuable. 80s, real quick, is legacy. People in their 80s are rejecting the waiting to die agenda society has maintained for them. More and more are commonplace in the workplace, elected offices, community leadership positions. When you think of John Henry Felix, he's going strong, right? Even though many more struggle at maintaining independent living or suffer major setbacks to their health, a new breed is emerging in increasing numbers of centurions. Okay, so people are living way, way longer. I just met my good friend's grandmother, and she's 103. We're just talking to her. Another friend, our neighbor, her grandfather's 102, still mobile. He just went into an assisted living facility at 102. He was, people in their 80s often say, it doesn't feel any different than any other time in my life, or I've been granted more time to live on a purpose, and I'm going to follow through on that purpose. So oftentimes they'll bypass a heart attack, cancer, or something, and they're like, you know what? I've been given a purpose. I got to figure out what that is. And I got to discover that. And if I do, that's their resolute focus. And you guys know people like that, or might be some of you here in the room. Our society has never tapped elders as a human capital for adding value to society. In the future, or even now, they're going to generate new roles for themselves. Okay? So 80s. How many of you guys are in your 80s here? Okay, does any of this resonate with you? It does? Okay. So upside, not much different from 70s. They remain active, healthy, involved, contributive, enjoy good social occasions and celebrations, often willing to do menial or manual work and don't have to be rewarded. Serving has its own reward. I used to run all the volunteers at a big church called New Hope years ago on staff, and our volunteers were these 80-year-old ladies, and they do thousands of bulletins. Nobody ever had to thank them. They just love doing it. Okay? Elders are a valuable resource for community development. They continue to enjoy leisure, sports, and travel. Okay? Downside is too many groups treat them as if they were fragile, sick, or about to die, often do not feel encouraged to be themselves, much less invited to lead. Okay? They feel workplace is close to them. They feel they have competencies they deserve to be considered for the job. They get discouraged by people, infirmed and dying people their age. They have physical problems. They need more genuine social contact, not just people patronizing them. They really want to engage and connect with people. Okay? So let me give you a couple examples. So the first one is Bobby Clinton. So he was a mentor of mine when I went to seminary. And Bobby's 83 now. And he wrote this whole thing about how leaders develop over a lifetime. And his short-term memory is going, but every time I visit him, he's always trying to memorize something new, read something new, stay sharp. He's a professor of like oogobs of people. And he wrote this book, Making of a Leader. He had a huge impact on how do leaders develop and how do they, what he would tell me is, Craig, how do leaders finish at the very ending of their life, not just at retirement? And that's really what you need to keep your eyes on. Okay? The other person is my uncle Gilman. Anybody you guys know Gilman who? So it's my mom's brother. I got to go to lunch with him after this. But Uncle Gilman taught me how to carve narcissus. He's a consummate teacher. If you guys have seen me on the cover of The Crave last summer, these are my daughters, and he taught me how to bake cakes. So that's another little known fact about me. I like to bake. And as a result, he passed on that legacy, and he actually went through pancreatic cancer a couple years ago. And last year, he was like literally going to die. We thought he was going to die. He was in Europe. He got stuck there because he got sick, couldn't come back. Came back, he was like skin and bones. And now he's healthy and strong again. He's pushing the limits at 85, okay? But I just said, this was like a family secret recipe. And I said, Uncle Gilman, should we share it? He's like, it's time. Share it with the community. But that's legacy, right? That's the stuff that you have secrets, but who do you pass it on to? How do you share it with the community? How do you lead in different ways? Okay? 90s and beyond, summing it up, this is kind of the harder part. Okay? So 90s is a period that few people expect to experience, yet more and more elders are moving into it. Same is true for centurions. Few of us can imagine it as a decade of developmental challenges, fulfillment, and social contributions. But to be fair, we have to challenge our assumptions and negative expectations about these age groups and learn how to promote purposeful living, healthy relationships, and inclusion of the social life of the broader society. Cohorts of elders is steadily increasing, and so is the need for more home and medical care for these people. But how do we think outside of the box? And what I'd like to throw out to you is, I want to introduce you to another mentor of mine, this guy, Tom Patterson. So he taught me everything I know about strategic planning. I met him when he was 80, okay? And he decided that he needed to start teaching his stuff to younger proteges. And how many of you guys know what OtterBox is? You guys own cell phones? But there's these cases called OtterBox. You guys have one? Some of you guys have them, okay? So OtterBox, when I first learned strategic planning, they were in the room. Tom started working with them. He was 80, okay? And that's probably 80. And he basically, OtterBox was a $5 million company. I spare you the details. But today, 10 years later, guess how big it is? It's $1 billion. So he's a mentor to them. And he actually pours into their young leaders. You can go and hang out with Tom in Colorado. And just that was a lot of fun. But he wrote this book that I think would be very helpful for some of you. And it's called Living the Life You're Meant to Live. And it's really a process book about living on purpose. Okay? So now we're going to shift into, now that we've talked about the different decades and things that are happening, I want to talk about self-renewal. Because what happens is, at every turn, every 10 years, you actually need to think through this cycle. In fact, you need to probably think through it more often. Change is the norm today, and this thing of hard work doesn't guarantee success anymore. Our lives include surprises and increasing complexity. Constant change is the only guarantee we have, and the future's not predictable. And I know you guys don't like that I didn't give you all the notes, but that's part of change, right? I'm willing to send you a PDF, but do you want to change? No, right? But that's part of how do you actually stay renewed? How do you engage? How do you try to learn? How do you grow? I'm not trying to force anything on you, but it's like, how do you have a change model within yourselves? Because you're in uncharted territory, and you're going to have to help and discover it. I'm hoping this simple map will give you some context to think about that. Okay? So the linear rule was, in the past, was success, security, happiness, progress. You know, be honest, hard work, and you get all of this. Okay? But life is not like that. It's more like this. It goes crazy. Okay? And what's changing, what's not? So birth rate in developed countries continues to decrease. People are going to change jobs every 3 years. In fact, the millennials will probably change. By the time they retire, they'll have like 10 jobs. Okay? By the year 2030, average American is going to be 57 years old, and his or her life expectancy will be about 90 years. Okay? So here's what you can count on, is that life is going to be a roller coaster. You got to go up and down. Okay? One of the things that I was going to have you do, but we don't have time today to do, is to draw a timeline. And I would encourage each of you to do that on your own. And each of you have peaks and valleys. So you have high points in life and you have low points. All of them are valuable. If your line is flat, you basically flatlined. Okay? So on the map, there's some of my high points, some of my low points. You have peaks and valleys. Okay? But what I'm going to do is talk to you about what happens in these peaks and valleys, what you can expect. So on the uptime, you can imagine you're going to have a lot of plans, dreams, and accomplishments. On the downside, you're going to actually have to choose new goals, purpose, training, and relearning. Often, these cycles follow the 10-year, sometimes 7-year for people. But it varies for different people. But you're going to have to use this model about every 10 years, on the decades usually. Okay? So often what we call an outward journey is what we call external systems, thinking, doing, accomplishments, results, and evaluation. On the internal level, what's below the surface, you're thinking about internal process or flow. How do you fit with all that you are? Okay? You're going to look at feelings and your introspection, and you're going to look at your being versus your doing. You're going to look at how you're going to renew. It's what we call an inward work-life transition. Okay? So oftentimes you're going to come across, as you look through your timeline, there's different turning points, you know? There's quarter life for 25-year-olds, there's midlife, you know, for 40-somethings, and then it goes to meaning, recasting, repurposing, or it's stagnation. It's one of those three. And you're going to start asking yourself these questions. Okay? So here's what we call the predictable cycle of renewal. Okay? It has 4 phases: going for it, doldrums, cocooning, and getting ready. Going for it is like the person. He's reaching for the stars. So that's what life feels like. Some of you know what that feels like today. Some of you knew what that felt like in the past when you got your first job or your dream job. Everything came together. Families started moving together. It was exciting. I'm kind of like I'm 40-something. I'm in that season. I like what I do. I love my family. It's really exciting. But oftentimes you're purposeful. You're focused. It's just moving. Okay? But oftentimes, everything in life, if you think back on your lives, everything eventually plateaus, okay? And then you move into what we call the doldrums, where at one point you have this wind in your sails, and the doldrums is when there's no wind. And then you're stuck. And like the hokulea, you just got to wait and look at the stars. And sometimes you get frustrated, okay? And oftentimes you'll feel trapped, angry. You'll feel like this lady in the box. You'll just feel like, what is this box? How can I get out of it? You're in a no-end, dead-end job, or you're in a place that you don't like. But acknowledging the pain is important. Acknowledging that it's real is key. Okay? And figuring out how to exit. Oftentimes you can do what we call a mini transition. So what you're going to do is restructure a few things in your life, and then you're actually going to ask some of these key questions. What do I hold on to? What do I let go of? What do I take on? What do I move on to? So you're going to do a mini shift, and you're going to move right back into phase 1. But other points in your life, if you have a major setback or life changes in some huge way, you need to rethink everything. All the cards have changed. Okay? When you do that, it's what we call cocooning. This is usually where I do my best work as a coach. And it's really helping people really come to terms with themselves. So what happens is you're not the hungry caterpillar eating all the leaves, but usually in stage 1, that's what the caterpillar looks like. Stage 2, the caterpillar is getting fat, okay? And it has to move on. It has to metamorphose. So what it does is, at this place of, if you think about the circle, at 3 o'clock, it spins a little bit of thread, hangs on it for its dear life, and pulls a cocoon over itself. And what happens is this magical thing. So if you cut a cocoon open at the halfway point, how many of you know what you see? Any ideas? What you actually see is, you won't see a caterpillar, you won't see a butterfly, what you see is goo. And that's what it feels like. Many of you have gone through these gooey times in life where it's just sort of like, I don't know which way is up. And when you don't know which way is up, that's a good thing, because it means that there's something deep going on inside of you. So what you need to do is you need to nurture and protect that. When our kids have cocoons at home, butterflies, if you shake it around, guess what? The butterfly will die. So you have to protect it. So you have to go on with doing life, but you have to do an inward journey. You have to dive deeper. Look at what's going on in life. How do you nurture yourself? So some of those aspects. But when the cocoon starts pushing, or the butterfly starts pushing out, it's just transformative. There's excitement. And it's, what are these new wings? So what is this new thing I'm going to take on? How am I going to do something different? And it's experimenting, but it's not taking full flight. It's exercising those wings and discovering what that looks and feels like. And as a result, it's going, hey, you know what? I'm not a caterpillar anymore, but I'm this beautiful butterfly. Okay, so what happens is when you actually start looking, and if we had done the little timeline, you would see, hey, there's up times and there's down times in my life. And you can probably, if many of you guys are mentors or sages, you can help young people see that too. Is that you might be in a downtime, but here's where you can transition to. And often this thing of a map becomes very, very helpful so that people know where they're going to go. Because oftentimes, who likes being in the cocoon? Oftentimes people think, wow, they're crazy, But it's just before the new thing emerges. And on average, the research that we found is that people will go through this entire process about 3 times in their lifetime. Okay, major processes. The mini transitions happen really quickly. So a dot-comer that changes jobs every 2 years, it's a mini transition. Okay, major life transition is when you go very deep and you go, all right, I'm going to emerge as something new. So a lot of you that are in your 50s and 60s, you're trying to figure out, what is this thing? And you have to give time to actually cocoon, discover, and not go so fast that you're jumping into the next thing, but you come back. A lot of my clients, what they do is they come out of retirement, I warn them, I tell them, I read the books, and I go, the first job you take is probably just going to be a transition kind of job. So you're going to take it, you probably quit. And oftentimes they do. And they're like, you're right. I thought I was gung-ho because they're like so itching because they used to work, and then they find their value and they go, you know what, this is not what I want. And then they back off, and then they rethink their portfolio so that it fits who they are, and then they re-engage, and then they move into this phase 1 again. And oftentimes you need to do that, either with yourself, and you can help others. Okay? So managing renewal. So how do you stay new? How do you stay fresh? And I'll be excited to hear how each of you guys discover that in your 80s and 90s. I know Tom he's 92, and he's still mentoring. He's still helping people. And it's just, what is the value? And how do you do that? Even though now he can't walk, what does he do? Okay? So here's a picture of what I hope for you guys in this next season of your life. It's been an honor to talk to you and to hear from you guys. Thank you.